Revenge films.
When I was little, my father left us. He had another woman and even had kids with her. I found out later that he kept our existence a secret from them, the woman, her parents, his employees, even the neighbors. So I took some paperwork and a voice recorder and went to see him. I went there to ask for child support. When I showed up, he just stared at me, totally blank. It wasn't until I mentioned my mom's name that he finally said,
"Oh."
Like he barely remembered her, and I said, "I'm here to talk about child support." He looked genuinely confused and asked,
"Why now?"
That look on his face, like it didn't make any sense to him, made me feel a kind of anger I can't describe. How could this man have absolutely no idea? The fact that I share blood with someone like him makes me sick. Clearly, he never thought about the kids he walked out on. Originally, I planned to just talk about the money and leave. I didn't think of him as my father, and honestly, I wanted nothing to do with him. But then I saw the life he'd built, calm, happy, ordinary, like nothing had ever happened, and I couldn't stay quiet. Before I knew it, the words just came out of my mouth. My mom died from cancer. She suffered so much and couldn't even get proper treatment. He froze, speechless, just stood there in shock. All those years while Mom and I struggled just to survive, he was here living a normal life. He had 3 more kids, opened a business, built a whole new life. You cheated on your wife, got another woman pregnant, and kicked your family out for just $9,400 without even dividing the assets or paying child support. While Mom was dying, you were living like nothing happened. How does that feel? Does that make you happy? I told him about Mom's illness, our life after he left, just let it all out. I said things to hurt him, vile things even. I had meant to stay calm, make my case, then leave, but once I started talking, I couldn't hold back. At some point, I was screaming and crying. I don't even remember exactly what I said in the second half. He broke down sobbing. The woman just kept saying, "I'm sorry, please forgive me," over and over again. Then my father said,
I am so sorry. I didn't know it was like that. I'll do anything. Anything you need, I'll help. Just please forgive me."
But of course, it's not something you can just forgive, and I had no intention of doing so. Still, since he said he'd do anything, I told him. "Then pay all the child support you owe, and when each of your 3 kids turns 16, I want to meet them, one-on-one, just us." They both hesitated at first, but when I asked, "Then it's okay if I tell your employees and neighbors everything?" they gave in. After that, I sent over the paperwork, and he transferred the money right away. He said he couldn't pay all of it at once, though, so we agreed he'd send it in installments. I knew that with installments, there was a chance he might stop paying, but I made it clear, if he missed a single payment, I wouldn't hesitate to expose everything. I told him I'd share the details of their affair and all the proof I had, not just with the people around them, but even at his kids' schools. After that, he promised he'd pay, no matter what. Maybe it was cruel of me to threaten them like that, but at least now I could actually go to college. Before she passed, my mom worked herself to the bone and left me some money. But I only want to use that money if I'm truly desperate. My mom got $9,000 in alimony from my father and $4,000 from the woman. But my dad never gave her a share of their assets. He acted like the alimony was enough. He even said he'd be the one to pay child support and had the paperwork drawn up by a lawyer, but he never paid a single dollar. Still, my mom never relied on him. She raised me all by herself without ever filing for seizure of his assets or demanding payment. She worked 2, sometimes 3 jobs, and even did temp work when she had to. She never once applied for welfare. She just did her best. Her only wish was that I'd be able to go to college, find a stable job, and someday meet someone wonderful and live a happy life. I don't really believe in fate or fairy tale love stories, but I wanted to fulfill that wish, whatever it took, even if it meant using money from the man who hurt us. My mom worked tirelessly, barely taking a day off. She was always kind, always smiling. But she'd always been frail, and when her health started to decline, it happened fast. I told her she should go to the hospital, but she brushed it off and said she'd always been like that. Now I realized that it was because of the cost. She knew that if something serious was found, the treatment would be expensive, so she just ignored the signs her body was giving her. The illness spread through her body so quickly. By the time we realized how serious it was already too late. She must have been pushing herself right to the edge. Thinking about how she tried to hide her pain from me, how she pretended to be okay, breaks my heart. Why did she have to die while my father and that woman are still alive? I never used to think like that, but after she was gone, the thought just hit me. I didn't plan to take revenge or anything like that, but a deep hatred started rising from inside me, and I couldn't just sit with it. I had to do something. After that, I threw myself into my studies. I used the money my father had started sending me and got into the college my mom had always dreamed of for me. But living without her was unbearable. Some days I felt like I was losing my mind. Every now and then my father would reach out. He'd say things like, "Take care of yourself," as if he cared, but it was all too little too late. If I hadn't gone to confront him that day, he would have gone on living happily, having completely erased us from his memory, me and the woman he betrayed. That thought filled me with nothing but resentment. Still, I kept going. I went to class, studied hard, pushed forward. Then one day in my second year, I got a message from the woman, the one he left us for. She asked if we could meet. We sat in the back corner of a cafe, and the first thing out of her mouth was, "Can't you just forgive us already? Haven't we paid you enough?" Apparently, ever since I showed up in their lives, my father had been eaten up with guilt. He wasn't the same cheerful person anymore, and he kept saying over and over how sorry he was for what he'd done. Because of that, their children, who had now found out that their mom had destroyed someone else's family and stolen a father away, completely unraveled. All three of them had become impossible to handle. They wouldn't even speak to her anymore. The tension in their household was affecting their business. Customers were leaving, reviews were getting worse, and sales were dropping. She said that at this rate, they might not even be able to survive financially. Listening to her go on, I nearly laughed. They tore apart someone else's home, and now that their own life was falling apart, they wanted me to fix it? Unbelievable. The fact that they'd forgotten how their own happiness was built on someone else's suffering, that alone showed how little they ever understood. She begged me, said their family was falling apart, that if I had even a shred of conscience, I should forgive my father so he could move on, so they could move on. She wanted me to set him free. But of course I couldn't forgive them, so I said, "Well, isn't that something? Now that you have your own family, you finally understand what it feels like to have it torn apart. Did you know that after you destroyed ours, my mom raised me all on her own? Even when she got cancer, she kept working and gave everything she had to me. Maybe when you're the one suffering like she did, you'll finally understand what she went through." Then I stood up, looked her in the eye, and said, "I look forward to that day." Then I walked away. She looked at me with a face full of despair and hatred, but I felt nothing. Absolutely nothing. Sometime after that, I heard that my father's business had shut down. On top of that, his family had completely fallen apart. I was told the woman, his wife, had suffered a mental breakdown and ended up in a psychiatric hospital. The children were left in his care, but people said the house felt like a funeral every day. Silent, tense, lifeless. The warmth they once had was gone. Maybe if my mom had still been alive, things would have turned out differently. But when I think about the life she had betrayed, abandoned, so I can't bring myself to feel sorry for them, I just can't forgive it. I know my father will carry the weight of guilt and regret for the rest of his life for what he did to me and what he did to her. I don't believe for a second that what I did was right, but when I remember how my mom endured it all, how she suffered and still tried to smile for me, I know I'll never regret it either.
How was today's video? If you enjoyed it, please subscribe, like, and leave a comment. Stay tuned for more.